If you're looking to stay informed with the latest analysis on the stories that are shaping our world in the areas of foreign policy, national security, and domestic politics, consider becoming a member of the DSR Network. With the DSR Network podcasts, stay ahead of the curve on global affairs. Each episode across our more than 10 shows features top experts, policymakers, and thought leaders who break down complex issues into digestible, engaging conversations. From breaking news to historical context, we cover the latest topics that matter most. Whether it's the intricacies of international diplomacy, the latest in national security strategies, or the dynamics of U.S. politics, the DSR Network has you covered. Members receive an ad-free listening experience, bonus content for virtually all of our shows, an invitation to join the DSR Slack community, enhanced show notes for select podcasts, and much more. Visit thedsrnetwork.com/buy and enter code JULY2024 to receive 50% off the regular membership price for the first year or first month. That's thedsrnetwork.com/buy and code JULY2024. Thank you very much for your support.
If you're loving this show, then it's clear you value unique perspectives on the issues shaping your world. That's why you should check out The Intelligence, the free award-winning daily news podcast from The Economist and its global network of correspondents. And with a subscription to Economist Podcasts Plus, you can also get access to special limited series such as The Modi Raj, a brand new show introducing you to India's enigmatic strongman, plus The Economist's suite of in-depth weekly shows on business, China, American politics, and tech, all for just a few dollars a month. Search for Economist Podcasts Plus to sign up and start listening.
This is the Daily Blast from the New Republic, produced and presented by the DSR Network. I'm your host, Greg Sargent. At a rally in Michigan over the weekend, Donald Trump uncorked one of his longest rants ever in praise of the world's autocrats, strongmen, and dictators. He hailed Xi of China as brilliant for controlling 1.4 billion people with an iron fist. He described Xi, Russia's Vladimir Putin, and Hungary's Viktor Orban as smart and tough, and said that Orban is right that we need somebody to quote-unquote protect us. It's a little hard to see how that meshes with the pivot to unity that some media figures promised us in the wake of the assassination attempt against Trump. But that aside, this is an important new indication that Trump is campaigning on an open and explicit promise of authoritarian rule should he be reelected president. Today we're chatting about this with Rick Wilson, the prominent former GOP strategist and current never-Trumper, who regularly argues that the GOP under Trump is not embracing Trump's authoritarian ambitions grudgingly, but is doing so enthusiastically and wholeheartedly. Great to have you on, Rick.
Hey, Greg, thanks so much. Happy to be with you.
Okay, first let's listen to what Trump said at his rally in Grand Rapids, Michigan on Saturday.
But can you imagine President Xi, Putin, all of them? They're all smart, tough. They love their country or they want to do well with their country, whatever it is, all ideology. But we have to have somebody that can protect us. And Orban was right. We have to have somebody that can protect us. Right now we have really low IQ people in there. And the president in particular, he has about a 70 IQ.
Rick, do you think the journalists and commentators who told us that Trump has grown softer and more introspective and reflective after his brush with death feel a little bit silly right now or not?
Look, I think shame is a sort of post-Trump experience for media and for a lot of people. I mean, we really have in this country decided that we're going to retroactively pretend every time the bait is put out there, oh, this will be the bigger Trump. This will be the better Trump. They keep pretending that this is ever going to happen, and it never does. And then they're shocked when it doesn't happen. And then, once again, we are in a world where if you don't understand that Donald Trump is always who he is, that is to say, an authoritarian, a psychotic, a dangerous figure who despises America, then I try to slap people and say, wake up once in a while. But a lot of folks that you and I both know, very serious journalists, capital S, capital J, have spent a long time now saying, oh no, this is the moment Trump became president. This is the time Trump, got serious. This is when Trump learned his lesson. He does not. People, he never learns his lesson. He's never serious. He's serious about his authoritarianism. He's never serious about reforming who he is or what he believes or what he does. It's always the same show. And people who don't believe that, have been proven wrong time and time and time again. And yet, here we go. Keep touching that hot stove, folks.
I want to ask you about your personal journey. I think it's worth noting that previous Republican presidents like George W. Bush wielded executive power very, very aggressively, torture, war propaganda, et cetera, and there's long been a strain in conservative thinking that involves an extremely expansive vision of that type of power. And Republicans were on board with all that. But for former Republicans like you, Trump clearly crossed into a new place. Can you tell us what drove you to turn on Trump? And what does it say that the GOP is now pretty much fully united behind him?
Well, look, I was one of the first Republican consultants out there of any sort of however you want to phrase it, national prominence or however you want to say it, who came out and said, I'm not going to do this. I can't abide what this guy is and represents. I can't do it. And as the years have gone by, more and more of my former friends, clients, associates, people I worked with for 30 years have decided that living in the Trump universe is what they want. And they've decided that this nationalism and this rising sort of authoritarian, curious world is the world they want to live in. And you know what? I reached the point where I know I can't change their hearts or their minds anymore. I get it. Some of them eventually learn the painful lesson that I came up with years ago of everything Trump touches dies, but most of them don't. Most of them still continue to pretend that normalcy will return, that Trump is just acting, that it's just a prank, it's just for fun, and it's really not. And we are in a moment in this country, Greg, where a person like me who has broadly small c conservative, small r Republican views is an apostate from the party I worked in and served for 30 years. And that's, look, I don't regret for a moment the decisions I've made about leaving the party, about fighting against Trump. I'm not ever going to say that was the wrong move. It was the correct thing for me personally. It's the correct thing for me morally, correct thing for me in 100 different axes. But I will say it is a country that is largely, or a party that's largely unrecognizable these days, to me. And I would love for there to be a center-right party in America that argued for limited government, constitution, the rule of law, all those things. Even when the Republican Party was saying those things, it was largely, to put it as graciously as I can, aspirational. But now it is overtly authoritarian. Now it is overtly, in bed with the Putins, the Orbans, the Xis, the Kims. It's just not the party or the country that anyone would recognize.
I think you raise a crucial point there, which is that a lot of Republicans have decided that this is exactly what they want.
Yeah.
It's critical to point out that during that rally, Trump suggested pretty clearly that repressive strongman rule would be good for this country under the
yes, he did.
Right? Under the guise
yes,
of quote unquote protection. How is this not front page news?
You know what? Here's the great and crowning irony of this. There are still reporters, like I said a minute ago, at the national level, and I talk to them all the time, I know you do too, who say things behind closed doors like, it's an act. He's playing. This is his shtick. This is his character he's playing. If anyone really believes that at this point, I find it astounding. He wants the world to look like the world that is run by Putin. Look at what he's doing in this campaign, Greg. He's essentially overtly now saying, we're going to run our economy and our nation like Vladimir Putin. Oh, Elon Musk gives me $50 million a month. I'm going to take care of him. My enemies need to be punished. I'm going to take revenge. I'm the retribution candidate. All these things are not coincidental. This is who he is. This is what he is planning to do and will do. And there are a lot of folks in the media who are so deep in the both sides spell that they want to treat these things as morally equivalent. Oh, Joe Biden, makes a crack about putting a bullseye on Donald Trump. But Donald Trump talks about deporting 30 million people. It's not the same thing, folks. It's not the same thing. There's not a moral equivalency between these two men or between these two campaigns.
I want to pick up on something you said there, Rick, about reporters. You talk to a lot of reporters. I think reporters...
I do.
Right? Do spend a lot of time talking to the kind of never Trump universe. So is your sense that their insistence that this is all just an act is just kind of opportunistic? It gives them an easy way to avoid taking sides?
Greg, I think an awful lot of it is that the refs have been worked so hard for so long by the right. And I can tell you this, folks, because I used to be the guy that did it, okay? I used to be the guy that would yell at reporters and say, "How dare you?" and do all the little stunt play of fake outrage and, "Oh, you're liberal media. Oh, you're not being object." Oh, look, I know this act like the back of my hand. And unfortunately, we are not in a position as a country anymore where the press, they get yelled at, they get screamed at. Somebody said this a few weeks ago, and I can't recall who it was, Greg. You might remember. If we complain about Joe Biden, a few Democrats might say something. But if we complain or say something about Donald Trump, we get 1,000 phone calls and threatening emails, and our people get death threats. And so it's working. That's what the Trump people know. They know it very well. They know they can intimidate, threaten, and browbeat reporters, and they get their way. They get their way all the time.
Really important, by the way, that you linked that to his deranged quote about Elon Musk, just so listeners know what we're talking about here, right? Elon Musk endorsed Trump right after the assassination attempt and has said he will raise, I forget how many, tens of millions of dollars.
$45 million a month for the next 4 months.
For the Trump
for
Trump. The Trump effort, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so at the rally, it was a little circumspect because Trump is very good at being corrupt and kind of covering it up while also letting people know exactly what he was doing. So it was kind of vaguely worded, but the gist of it was that we should really keep.
He said we're going to take care of Elon Musk. I mean,
we're going to take care of the smart people who get that there's a deal to be made here. That's what he basically said.
Listen, again, this is Putinism writ large. This is the same exact game plan that Vladimir Putin executed after the end of the Cold War, and Russia was in that transitional period where they were breaking up all the old state-run enterprises, and they all became fiefdoms of allies to Putin, and they all paid the VIG every month to Vladimir Putin, their percentage that had to go to him. To keep their lives and prosperity intact. And look, this is something that is deeply un-American. Remarkably, America's political corruption has always been not terrible. It's existed, but it hasn't been at that sort of massive kleptocracy scale that Vladimir Putin executed on every single day.
I mean, Rick, I think the critical point you're making there is that the overt authoritarian praise of strongmen and dictators and tin pots is directly linked to the sort of tacit promise to take care of the big oligarchs who are helping him.
100%. These folks are saying they're saying every day, our campaign wants this amount of money and we'll do this thing for you. It's purely transactional. It's extraordinarily corrupt. And I don't think most Americans have really weighed that this isn't, Donald Trump plays his base like a fiddle. And all these people hear things like, "Oh, we're going to go against the woke people and the gays and everything else." But really, Donald Trump is there to empower and enrich a very select group of people who have learned how to work the system, have learned that you can buy the favor of a president, particularly if that president is Donald Trump. You can use that explicit transactional nature of all things about Trump to enrich yourself, to protect yourself, to give your company or your business sector a sweeping set of protections in the marketplace. You can do advantage yourself from a regulatory perspective. All of these things are really, really out there, right in your face now. It's not subtle. It's not hidden anymore. It's not some sort of like elliptical nod and a wink, like, hey, good buddy, help me out here with this, and I may be able to do you a favor later. It is, give me X and I'll give you Y. I mean, if you don't think Elon Musk is, and I say this as a total space nerd who actually thinks SpaceX, the company, is doing some cool stuff. But, if you don't think Donald Trump's explicit thing to Elon Musk was, I'm going to give you billions and billions of dollars, you're going to be the sole source provider of space lift in the future, you're mistaken. It's what he's doing.
I just want to remind the listeners, what you're talking about here, among other things, is the recent news that Trump was in a room full of big oil executives, and he essentially said, I want you to raise $1 billion for me, and he went through all the specific things he would do for them that they want.
Yep. Regulatory relief, ending the licensing procedure as it exists now so that they can just say, fuck it, I want to drill here and go. I mean, I'm shortcutting it a little bit. I'm exaggerating a little bit.
He was even more specific than that, really.
Yeah.
He was really very concrete.
Yeah. Exactly. He was saying directly to them, I will make your industry, I will give you benefits to your industry that completely ignore all the environmental protections and, frankly, also ignore some of the things that where the industry would have to compete with other industries and within itself. He's going to pick out a couple of companies inside the energy sector and go, you helped me, you were nice to me, you were good to me, therefore you will receive these. This is, and Greg, this is what offends me as a conservative. This is not how conservatives should view or traditionally have viewed government. This is not how this system should work. This system should work much differently than that. If you believe in a free market, then you believe that there should be there should not be a regulatory preference for your friends. You should not believe that companies or sectors that you like get advantages. You should believe in a free market. If you believe that we live in a system of representative government, you should believe that regulations that come from Congress cannot be just like wiped away by the presidential decision that, oh, those folks are good to us, they're our friends. And so therefore they don't have to play by the rules.
I think there's something dangerous worth pointing out here. Additionally, Trump is campaigning on a promise of authoritarian rule, and I think they're deliberately advertising that. So when you see Trump threaten to pardon the January 6th rioters, which essentially hails people who tried to invalidate an American election with mob violence as patriots and heroes and so forth, or when you see Trump threaten to prosecute his opponents without cause, set up giant camps to facilitate mass removals, including with the military and so forth, they're really kind of testing the public's tolerance for authoritarian solutions. Rick, what does it say that Trump and his allies are so confident in winning at this point that they don't even see a need to tone this stuff down to win non-MAGA voters?
Look, Greg, I think that the transition for the Republican Party from conservatism to authoritarianism is done. It's over. I think part of what they're doing is trying to shove the Overton window over to the right, because there is a sense that they're close to victory. They're going to win this thing. They're going to make it, and that they're going to have a clean runway ahead of them. Okay. And that clean runway is going to give them the power to execute anything they want. They're socially trying to engineer this with the normies to say, oh yeah, Trump's threatening to do X or Y. And so when it happens, it won't seem as shocking. It won't seem as horrifying. But I am deeply convinced that that they've only shown us the first edge of the razor blade so far. They've only shown us the initial pain level they want to deploy into this country and around the world. They've only shown us the preview of where Trump wants to take this country. And I'm convinced it's going to be vastly worse even than his allies believe. And there are people who right now have said, oh, well, he's not going to really deport all these people. He's not going to anybody who's sure about that needs, I think, to check their predicates, because this guy will be unconstrained in the next administration. He will not have the quote unquote grown-ups around him. He will not have the smart people around him. This will not be the lift, or it will not be constrained by any sort of friction when he wants to do crazy things.
Alarming. I want to close on something about the media that you kind of hinted at before. At this point, when Trump indulges in this kind of dictator talk, reporters don't even register it, and as a result,
they no longer report it. They no longer report it. It's like, oh, that's baked in the cake.
Exactly. And so there are a couple of different consequences to this. One is that Republican lawmakers supporting Trump aren't asked to respond to it, which is bad. But second, Trump is directly telling the MAGA faithful to just wait. Authoritarian strongman rule is coming. We're going to torment your enemies with all sorts
we're going to hurt people that you hate.
We're going to hurt people that you hate, exciting MAGA voters, yet swing voters may never even hear about it. And so, because it's not reported. And so this tendency of the press to not make any kind of big deal about this stuff both gives Trump's strategy a big assist, but also disarms the broader public. It fails to warn them about what a second Trump term really means. It seems, what's the answer to this problem?
The idea on the part of a lot of reporters that Trump's second term will be like the first term, maybe a little noisier, is I think one of the most deadly conceits in this country that we've ever faced. This is the New York Times headline of, Mr. Hitler tamed by prison. This is not, there is no better Trump. This is not going to get better, cleaner, easier, safer. He is going to do what the people around him, like Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller and all these crazies and the Project 2025 boys, everything they're promising, they mean it. They're not playing here. This isn't rhetoric. This isn't like a campaign slogan. This is an intentional set of plans and policies that they will implement, and reporters aren't taking it seriously. There are and still, look, some do, but the vast majority, I think some of it, and I'm a cynic here. I think some of it is, I think there are a lot of reporters who've decided, okay, he's going to win. We better be in good with people. I'm not saying it's purely transactional or access journalism, but some of it most certainly is cynical at the minimum.
So is there a way to turn all the dictator talk into a real political liability for Trump? If you were advising Democrats, how would you suggest they use it?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things we're doing at the Lincoln Project right now is that we've identified a large cohort. It's actually a pretty meaningful number of what we call Red Dawn conservatives. Kind of a funny way to put it, but those Red Dawn conservatives are, they are Republican on almost every other metric, but they are upset. They are freaked out a little bit by the weird and frankly, ahistorical version of how Trump talks about these dictators. These are people who remember, and they're largely Gen X and early millennials and the very latest boomers, where they're like, wait a minute, Putin's the bad guy. Putin's not the good guy. Putin's the bad guy. They remember those times. They remember Reagan and tear down this wall instead of Mr. Putin, may I kiss your ass. So those folks are a meaningful cohort of Republican voters. We've been talking to those people a lot for the last couple of years, and there is a degree to which that the campaign is ignoring them. They think they're all Never Trumpers, but there's actually an overlap of them outside of the Never Trump space, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Can you expand on that a bit? I mean, how do you actually reach these voters? What should Democrats do to get them? And is there an actual chance that it could meaningfully impact the election if it were done properly?
It can in a few states. A lot of these folks are veterans. A lot of these folks are in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Arizona. Our modeling of this has been very aggressive to try to track down, like the kinds of folks that we need to identify, the kinds of folks we need to pin down as swing voters in this play. So we really have a pretty good model of it. And look, we've talked to a lot of them about this by saying, things that they know, things they remember. Reagan, the elder Bush, talking about the Cold War, about security, about the nation, about America's role in the world. These are people that don't hate NATO, for instance. They're not the same sort of clownish characters who are in Putin's pocket on the side of Steve Bannon and Rick Grinnell and
J.D.
Vance, all these people.
So what's the prognosis here, Rick?
As long as this race becomes a referendum on Donald Trump, I believe I could pull somebody out of a Waffle House and say, hold on, you're not going to finish your breakfast. You're going to run for president and beat Donald Trump. The referendum on Trump and on the biggest vulnerability Trump has bought for himself, Project 2025, it's a serious moment. There's a real way to get this done. You can't win this race. You can't win this race as long as you're not attacking Trump on a consistent, passionate basis every single day.
And I would add, I think Trump's disastrous convention speech actually shows that he's beatable.
Greg, the guy has high negatives. His absolute high watermark is 46%. You can beat this guy. Mitt Romney lost with 47.2%. Trump is beatable. It's just a matter of going out and beating him. If that makes any sense, it's you got to play out the hand. You can't just hope he falls apart. You've got to make him fall apart. You've got to push him to fall apart. You've got to hit him and hit him and hit him and hit him.
Rick Wilson, thanks so much for coming on with us.
You bet, Greg. Happy to be with you, my friend. Talk to you soon.
You've been listening to The Daily Blast with me, your host, Greg Sargent. The Daily Blast is a New Republic podcast and is produced by Riley Fessler on the DSR Network.